Hello everybody, welcome to ChinFat. In this episode I'm going to be showing you guys how to do use the auto reframe function in Premiere Pro. And where this is really helpful is if you have a specific aspect ratio, like here this short film here was shot in a little bit wider than 16 by 9, but for all intents and purposes we'll call this 16 by 9. That means for every 16 pixels you have going across, you have 9 pixels going up and down, which means you have more pixels going sideways than you do up and down and gives you this elongated look to it, kind of movie feel to it. Let's say you finish this film and you want to do a version for something that has a vertical aspect ratio, something like TikTok, Instagram, any other thing that you need to format this to a vertical position. What that's basically going to be doing is cropping a portion out of your image and creating just a vertical square out of it right there and formatting it for a medium that supports that aspect ratio. And that would be considered the 9:16 aspect ratio. For example, here, if you've seen some TikTok videos, or Instagram videos, oftentimes they are formatted like this, vertically, so people can watch them on their phone and hold their phones regularly without having to rotate their phone. Now this video is shot that way, but this video we want to format into that way. So if you're going to do that, there's a couple different ways of doing this, and first I'm going to show you the best way of converting this video to that. The auto reframing feature is pretty cool, and this is if the entire movie is in that aspect ratio, which this one is. So we're going to do this. I'm going to go over to my timeline here in the project window, and that's my timeline called Edit there, and over here that's the same timeline as this right here. So I'm going to right click on that, and we're going to go to Auto Reframe Sequence. I'm going to click on that, and this is going to give you some options. First of all, it's going to ask you, it's going to create its own timeline for that, and it's going to put the video into it, and then it's going to ask what sort of conversion you want to do. There are some mediums out there that support the square 1:1 aspect ratio. We are going vertical 9:16 for something specifically like TikTok. So I'm going to check mark that, and on the motion tracking feature here, you can drop this down. If you've got a lot of movement, you can do faster motion. If you've got slower motion, you can just click that. I'm going to click slower motion because there's not a lot of frantic movement in this entire short film. It's like 1.5 minutes or 2 minutes or something like that. It's also got another option here. The default is do not nest the clips. This will replace your current motion adjustments. There are some instances where you would want to use nest clips, and what that basically does is takes every clip and put it into its own timeline, especially if you're using effect. You would want to use this one here if you have added scale and position changes to your clip. Let me show you here. Like if we go to this clip right here and we select that clip, go to Effect Controls, and we can go to Scale, and we're going to say we increase the size a little bit, maybe to get rid of a boom shadow or something like that, and then repositioned it. If you've done some changes like that, you'll want to go to the Auto Reframe Sequence, and you will want to say Nest Clips. In fact, if you just want to be safe and you can't remember if you've done anything under there, it doesn't hurt to do Nest Clips all the time. If you haven't, there's no motion things that have been done on this project except for what I just did, so I'm going to remove those attributes, and I'm just removing the motion attributes here, and it's back to normal. So now I'm going to go down, right click, and we're going to go to Auto Frame Sequence. I'm going to tell it no, don't nest the clips, like I said, unless you have done some motion adjustments on this, but I'm going to hit Create. And it did it pretty quickly. Sometimes it'll take a couple seconds to analyze, but this one, it has done it fairly quickly. Now, I've got some problems here. It looks like on the first clip it did okay. It did some reframing, but on here, look what it's done. It has embedded this as a 16 by 9 within your 9:16, and it has added added these what they call letterboxing here. So that's no good. It needs to be zoomed up and reframe. It has to zoom and reframe, and this actually has a good face detection software in here. It detects where the main action is. So let's undo that. So I'm going to go down, and they've put that new timeline in a folder called Auto Reframed Sequences. I'm going to open that up, and there's that Edit 9:16 that I've got open right now. Now I'm going to show you the problem here, what's happened. This is a problem I've seen a lot of people bring up online, and they can't quite find an answer for. If you imported these clips and you had this preference check marked under Preferences, Media, and you had this Scale to Frame Size turned on as you imported the media, what that does is it reframes video for different sizes of timelines, and it scaled it down to fit the new timeline, which we don't want. And I had that feature checkmarked on almost all these clips here. In fact, if I go down to my timeline and hit Command A or Control A to select all, and I right click, I can just uncheck them on everything. I'm going to uncheck them right now, scale to frame size, and that is unchecked. That's kind of a problem that people get with if they've got that check mark. So you got to make sure that is unchecked. Now I can do this again. I can go down to Edit and Auto Reframe Sequence. It's going to rename it Edit 9:16. Everything's checkmarked the way I want it. We can even do slower motion on this, and I'm going to hit Create. And now let's go through the timeline. And it's done a pretty good job here. Let's see if it kept the face in here. Here you can't see the face because she's turned over in her bed. So this one we're going to have to adjust, but we move through it. Here it keeps her face in the clip, keeps the clock in the clip. And here's a dolly up to her face, and it doesn't quite do it. If you've got like an action video or something with a lot of faces in it, it does it a lot better. But here it seems to be doing okay. Like right here, it kept her face in the shot. And here it does a weird little pan as this kind of monster comes walking in here. Right there, it does this weird pan over to the door when the action starts, because the monster wasn't there at first, and then all of a sudden when it walks in, then it detected action and it panned over to the left. So we can fix some of these, but for the most part, it looks like it did some pretty decent reframing on the girl, and on the monster it did an okay job. So now if you have to fix some of these and adjust it, that's a good starting point there. Sometimes I've had a couple of these that I formatted it and I didn't have to adjust anything. It did a great job on adjusting the whole thing. And usually because you have faces, if you have a person's face in the image, it does a pretty good job of going to where the action is and where the face is. So let's go to this first clip here, and let's say I want this to actually move over to where we can see her in the opening right here, because we can't see her and it doesn't detect the face because she's turned over and turned away from the camera. So I'm going to select that shot. We're going to go to Effect Controls, and we're going to go to the Effect Controls tab up here with it selected, and here is the Auto Reframe it has added there, and you can do a reanalyze if you want to, but what we're going to do here is we're just going to adjust the framing on this. I just want to grab this. See, I can even see the wireframe there, and it's scooted over to the right. I want to scoot it over to the left. All right, and it has generated keyframes to try to keep whatever it thinks need to stay in frame. So you can go over here, and you can go under Adjust Position under the Auto Reframe and check mark Overwrite Generated Path. That's going to bring up the keyframes that it used to generate the movement, and you can actually see it moving here. See, watch the video as it moves. See, I did a pan there where I tried to pan with the desk. I thought the desk is where the action was. But see, I like where it starts on this window here, and then as moving over, it tries to keep that lamp in position there. So these are those movement keyframes right there. In fact, I'm going to move this over just a little bit and get a little more room here and see where that movement happens. And it basically happens from this keyframe to that keyframe. So I'm going to eliminate all these in between. This can get a little complex. I'm going to eliminate those in between. I'm going to arrow over and land on this keyframe, then land on the next keyframe, and that's where it's done that big movement. And even all these other keyframes, it's like trying to keep track of that lamp there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to get rid of all those other keyframes as well, and then I'm going to land on this second keyframe where it's done the move. Now that I've landed on that keyframe, I'm going to grab that, and I'm going to change the horizontal position. I'm going to move this over and adjust it to the bed. And let's see how that works now. And that was a little too fast, so I can grab this keyframe and stretch it out and make it last longer. Now let's see how that looks. And it goes a little past her head, so I'm going to land on that keyframe and adjust it where it needs to end up, like right there, and that works. So that way we see the opening windows, and it pans, and then you see this little animation that happens right here from there to there, that pans to the right, and then we see her move in the bed. If we want to do this again kind of in a minimal way, like right here, I've got this shot where when she turns over, it looks good. She turns over. And when you see her turn over, you see her look at the clock. But I want to see that face here at the very beginning. So same thing, I'm going to select this clip. I'm going to go to Auto Reframe. I'm going to check mark Overwrite Generated Path. Here are the keyframes. And where it does the real movement looks like is in between these two keyframes right there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to eliminate all these keyframes. I'm going to have this keyframe open up on her, start on her face. I'm going to delete that one, jump to this first keyframe. Let's arrow that down and jump to this first keyframe, and I'm going to adjust that so it is on her face to start with, right there. Now as we play through, it does that kind of long pan as she looks up toward the clock. One thing I've noticed that this Auto Reframe does when it creates these keyframes, it does a nice smoothing job. It basically, when it goes from one keyframe to the next, it does this nice kind of gradual and feathers in and out of the keyframe instead of making it look look very unnatural. So it makes it look like the camera was actually panning. And if you want to even smooth that out just a little bit more, you could right-click on these ending keyframes here, and we're going to say Temporal Interpolation, and we're going to tell it to ease into that. So now as we play, it eases into that move a little bit more, and over here on this keyframe we can right click and say Temporal Interpolation and ease out, and that way it will kind of ease into the pan a little bit, and then it'll ease out of that pan, and then it'll ease into the other one there, and it looks nice and smooth. It makes it look like a part of the actual, like they did the pan with a tripod. And one more time, when we got this kind of pan, when the action starts in the doorway, it does a quick little pan over. That's going to be an easy fix. Last time here, select that, go to Auto Reframe, check mark Overwrite Generated Path, arrow this down, and find out where that movement happened. and I'm arrowing over these keyframes, and it starts on, it happens within these keyframes over here. So I can select all these here, delete it, and it should be good to go. Now it's just going to stay on the doorway the entire time, and then when this thing walks inside, it kind of pans and follows it a little bit. Does a good job of following it. Cool, and now we are done with that. Now if you want to export this, you can go Command M or Control M on a PC to export out your project. And when you go to some of these presets, you might want to match like the bit depth, the color quality of YouTube. So I'm going to use a YouTube preset, but this is a 1080 preset here. I'm going to click on that, and notice it adds what are called pillar boxes on either side of this this video clip here. So I can just go over to the video tab and hit Match Source, and it will match those settings. And now we have it 9:16 rather than 16:9, and cramming it in there and creating the pillar boxes. And now I can choose my output name, find a location to save it, name it, Monster Movie 9:16, save that, and export. Now when we go to that video and play it, it's going to open up in a vertical video window and play back, and now it's been formatted for something like TikTok. Alright, the second way that you might want to use this is, let's say you have shot some video that was actually in the proper format, and you were starting with footage that was already shot vertically. This one was shot, this clip here, if you want to look at the settings, reveal on project, right click on it, go to reveal the project, and let's look at the information here under the preview area. That is 1080 by 1920, so it's like 1920 by 1080, but reverse, so it's vertical instead of horizontal. And let's say we've been editing this project here, and we want to add some video that is not formatted properly. So I'm going to grab a clip. These don't belong, but I'm going to grab a clip that from the monster project here and stick this in here. So I'm going to go to the other one that I had, that little monster movie, and we're going to grab one that's 16:9, and I grab that and put that down into this proper sequence that is already properly formatted. But when I drop it down in, notice that it has letterbox up for the top and the bottom to fit the whole video inside there. And the reason why it did is because if I right click on this, it has scale to frame size. So once again, you want to make sure that that's unchecked when you import your media. Or you can just right click on the video and uncheck it, and then it zooms it up, because now it's just dropped it into its actual resolution without trying to, it has not zoomed this to fit this resolution. This is the actual resolution of this video clip here, but it's turned on its side. So you got to make sure that that is turned off, so don't forget that. Now we're going to go to our effects tab here in the project area, and I'm going to type let's just type reframe, and it brings up the auto reframe down there. And I can grab that effect and drag and drop it onto this clip that's already in the timeline. So you can either do it to a whole timeline, or you can just do it to a clip. I'm going to drop it on there, let go, hit format, analyze, and then it suddenly adjusted, and there you go. So I did a really quick analysis, and now as I play through this, and I got this dolly move, it keeps locked to her face, and it has all those keyframes in there. If I select this, go to Effect Controls, look at the auto reframe, check mark the overwrite generated path, and you'll see it's generated some keyframes in there, so I can uncheck that. So that's a pretty easy way to use that there, just dropping it onto a clip. So if you need to reanalyze, you can go up and click on Analyze again, and it will reanalyze it. But oftentimes it will have the same effect. So anyway, pretty cool tool that Premiere Pro has added. They've added that about a year ago from the time that I recorded this video. But if you have any questions at all, please let me know.